Yes. Good morning, brethren. Happy Sabbath. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to the Sabbath Service AM to the U.S., PM to the U.K., and a little later PM this morning. I was late with the Bible study last night, late this morning. This super cold weather has knocked me back a little bit, but after some prayer, God's got me up and going, and we're going to quickly get into some things today that will hopefully make for a good Sabbath, edifying Sabbath for you, and thank you for those of you that are here. I appreciate you. Some of you sent me some messages on Facebook. When I checked my email this morning, I saw that, and look, I'm already late, so I couldn't go there and respond to anybody, but after services, after we get the things, I didn't get the Bible study in the index last night. I'll get that in after we're on live. We had a great Bible study last night with Dale, I'm going to try to pronounce this correctly, Patrick, for you guys. Karakis. Karakis, I think is the way he told me to pronounce that. Not Caracas, but Karakis. All right, they'll correct me if I'm wrong. I'll listen to the Bible study where again, sometime today, where Dale mentioned that last night. Dale, you got a lot. You've seen it already. You got a lot of likes and comments thanking you for the reading and the Bible study last night. And overall, very good job. I should have been a little more responsive to you when you had just a little problem pronouncing some of those names that we studied way back in college and that are difficult to pronounce unless you know. But the type was a little small, and I lost my place. I got out of, and I was trying to keep the graphics up with you and find my place, and then later we caught up. But good job on your part last night overall, and many have commented on that. Let me tell you where we're going today. We're going to open up with 3 hymns. We'll pause between a couple of them and give a couple of prayer requests. And I have, you'll hear from Dan Listen direct. He'll tell you what he needs in prayer. He'll tell you his current condition. He will also have a message, Dale, for you and Patrick, with your mention that you want to come on down and go through some training here, take some of the local work that Amazon is begging for people. If you're looking for work, I got 3 acres of land next to me over here. You can come down, put you a portable house on it, and go to work for Amazon. They're begging for people. They're looking for 1,500 more people. They're hiring a total of 6,500 people at that huge megalopolis warehouse operation they have just a few miles from here. And they the thing is, must be a dozen football fields, the size of a dozen football fields, one after another or more. A huge operation they've put together down next to the Alabama water park, which is, when things are normal, is a summertime and springtime fun amusement park to go to. And if we can make some arrangements where they would keep that open during feast time, that would make a great feast location here near that. If we could get them to open it up during Feast of Tabernacles, kids have a great time going to the water park with all the amusement rides they have related to water there. A big, fun, nice one. All right, and I actually do hope to do that because I've dedicated some land to the ministry that was exempt from tax because of my senior age under a law that Alabama has for, when you reach a senior age, you can file a homestead on your land as long as you got a house and living on it. And when it was all one parcel, I had it real estate tax exempt. But once I subdivided the property and donated it to the church ministry, the county is saying unless I put a meeting hall on it, some kind of building in which people can come and assemble and meet, Yeah, even during coronavirus, they're telling me I got to put a meeting hall on it, or they're not going to give me my tax exemption. They've taken away my personal tax exemption over that land, and are making me pay tax on it. I got to fork that out before December 31st. I've got the money, thank you, but I've got to do that. And I would sometime next year. I need to build something there if we're going to. Unless, to help me not have to pay tax on it again next year, because it's in a church ministry name, but that alone doesn't do it. They got to approve, and see that you're using it in ways they define as acceptable to the county for church use. Okay, that's part of the world we live in. But I was going to say, brethren, some of you that I haven't answered, I am concerned, and I want to get back and answer all of you. And not that many, but if everybody, if I just took time out to do that, it would have been even later this morning. I did, normally you do your fasting privately before God, and I did that, but I'm going to tell the few of you here that I fasted a couple of days this week with each one of you who've written me a message in mind, and a lot of prayer behind things. And got a wonderful email from my sister this morning. I'm looking for an email and so I'll try to get back to you and give you a response this morning. I have some things off in the mail to some of you. I'll know I sent it by what do you call that? Priority mail with tracking, because one of the last things when I sent something of value, I was like, "Ooh, wow! I'm glad I had something of value. I'm glad it was returned since you didn't get it." So I said, "I better not send it without tracking next time I send it back out." So I'll let you know how to see that when that's coming for yourself. Got a good email from my sister this morning out of California. I'm looking for either an email or a phone call. 669, where does that come from? I'm looking for a response from a reporter in Israel who's often offered to provide reports for me for World Watch. And I'm asking her how things are going there with all those rockets being blasted over, as the news is reporting in the last 12, 18 hours, from Gaza into Israel after Israel attacked Syria. And I want to ask her, too, what she can tell us about why Israel attacked Syria. I mean, basically we know Israel would not do that without a good reason. And it may have something to do with the flags that Syria has been putting on the border of the land of Israel. But maybe we can hear from Miss Emily Rose a little bit later. I'll put her picture up here on the screen, show you who we're talking about. It'd be great to get a response. She's offered to provide reports for World Watch and gave me the idea that, wow, some of the other contacts I have on LinkedIn in other countries, in Europe and England, a lot of different, even in China. I bet if I asked them, would you provide reports for our program, they'd say, thumbs up, Steve, we'll do it. Stephen, we'll do it. Okay, the Bible study last night was a reading aloud by Dale Caracas of the booklet that Mr. Armstrong encouraged everybody to read in the telecast that we played 2 weeks ago last night, when he gave the telecast on the plain truth about Christmas, and he recommended the booklet by that name. And so Dale volunteered to read that from New York. He read it over his cell phone. I think we got a pretty good audio level and an audio quality with that. As I mentioned, a lot of people gave their likes and commented to Dale, thank you for reading that, Dale, and I thank you for that too, Dale. After it was over, without having to punch all these buttons, I laid down on my bed and gave it a listen and said, hey, good job, Dale, very good job. And in fact, I'm going to ask you if you want to read the booklet Mr. Armstrong is going to mention in the telecast this morning. We're back on track with Mr. Armstrong covering prophecy this morning, and again, we'll be doing that again next Sabbath. He'll be covering these things you see in our studio. Let me back out here with a shot. On both walls here, he'll be covering things, and the reason we have these two beasts from the book of Revelation, chapter 13, on our walls is because these relate to things that we should be watching that are about to happen. The beast from the sea goes all the way back to what Mr. Armstrong will be speaking a lot about this morning, about the dream that King Nebuchadnezzar had and how God revealed that through Daniel for him. And he saw this thing you see over my head on the two columns at the top here, top of the two columns, the statue that King Nebuchadnezzar saw in his dream that's recorded in the book of Daniel chapter 2. And so this beast over here on the far wall to your left, screen 1 as we call it here in the studio, that beast from the ocean, it starts with the head of a lion that's similar to the head of gold on this statue from Daniel 2 that represents old King Nebuchadnezzar, a world-ruling empire that he had. And then the successive world-ruling empires following him, the shoulder and breast of silver, same as on this beast from the ocean, the head of the bear, the second world-ruling empire with your Greeks, with your Persians, your Medes and Persians. And then the third world ruling empire, since we know that, and Mr. Armstrong is going to be covering this, but I'll kind of whet your appetite so you can be with him, already be thinking ahead what he's going to be talking about, and be with him as he gives a lot of other detail. The third world ruling empire, illustrated in the statue from Daniel 2 by the belly and thighs of brass, same as on this beast from the ocean, the third beast with the four heads of a leopard. And that brings us up to 6 heads with 3 beasts. The first 2 are just 1 head each, and the third beast having 4 heads, that's 6 heads, and then we get to that. Let's see, did I mention, those 4 heads represent the generals of Alexander, who took over after he died with the Greek third world ruling empire. And then we get down to the legs on this statue from Daniel 2, representing the 4th beast, the 4th world ruling empire, that of Rome, and its division. Reason why it comes down the 2 legs, because it's divided into east and west. It became divided, and your Roman Empire, and that's reflected in the beast from the ocean from Revelation 13, starting in verse 1 with that beast from the ocean. God is mostly, through the Apostle John, doing the book of Revelation chronologically, in time order. And so this beast in time order is first. It goes all the way back to King Nebuchadnezzar. The first head on that beast, King Nebuchadnezzar. But then when we get to the 4th beast on this beast from the ocean, the 7th head being the head on the 4th beast, because of the numbering of the 4 heads on the 3rd beast, total 6, and then when we get to the 4th beast, its head is the 7th head with 10 horns, numbers that God likes to use for prophetic reasons. And those 10 horns, the first 3 were plucked up by the Pope because they wouldn't cooperate with him, and the 7 remaining horns that cooperated with the Pope and is represented by the 7 heads on this beast from the land, with the woman riding those 7 heads, which are the last 7 horns over here that cooperated with the woman. Now, in prophecy, a woman is a church, and before Christ returns, there are 2 churches. Now, there's only one true church, but then there's also one big false church. Now, it has daughters, and it is a source through which the devil, Revelation 12:9, Mr. Armstrong will mention that verse again today. He keeps emphasizing that for us, that that old serpent, the great dragon that was went up and tried to attack God's throne. Not once, but like in prophecy, duality, twice. He did it once before when he messed up the world before the creation of man. He's doing it again during these latter days, these end times, and then God is gonna throw him back down to this earth, and he comes back very angry, full of wrath, and he goes after the woman of Revelation 12, which pictures the true church. And he works through the woman of Revelation 17, picturing the great whore, the great false church. All right, just trying to give you a little bit, and these 7 last horns on this beast from the ocean, again, relate to the 7 heads, one for one, 7 heads on this beast from the land. And those 7 heads, beast from the land, they run from Justinian in 554 AD through Napoleon in 1814 AD. And then there's a little recess, a break. So the beast that was active from 554 to 1814 AD is not, but not dead, just dormant, sleeping, from 1814 to 1935, when Mussolini became the one is of Revelation 17, verse 10, who had a reign the same length as Napoleon, 9.5 years, from the spring of 1935 from the fall of 1935 to the spring of 1945. That was Mussolini. So he revived the Holy Roman Empire for its 6th dynasty. And to get the understanding on this, we need to go to Revelation 17, verse 10, where it says there are 7 kings, 7 kings, 7 dynasties of the Holy Roman Empire. It says next 5 are fallen. Those are the 5 between Justinian and Napoleon. Justinian, Charlemagne, Otto the Great, Charles V was the 4th of those 5 kings, and Napoleon was the last, the 5th of those 5 that are fallen. Then the beast that was active through those 5 kings, 5 dynasties, for a period of 1,260 continuous prophetic years, then went into the abyss. The German Chancellor Angela Merkel made an astonishing mention in January of last year, of 2019. Now, we just have a few more days we can say last year in 2020, so I'm going to make it clear it was January of 2019 when the German Chancellor Angela Merkel stood up and made a pronouncement against the United Kingdom, a warning. And not just to them, but really, since it was picked up by the worldwide news, it was a warning to the whole world, in essence, as she lashed out in anger. You people better take a look into the abyss. And what was she saying? She was definitely using Bible language, and that Bible language relates to Revelation 17, verse 8, in which it talks about that beast in the abyss. The King James Version references that abyss as, what am I doing way out here? Let me come a little closer to you. The King James Version represents that abyss by rendering it as a bottomless pit. But the original Greek is the abyss, and that's the word Mrs. Merkel, whose native tongue is German's, decided to use. She decided to say, you people better look into the abyss. And thank you, Mrs. Merkel. What are they going to see in there? Well, you look in Revelation 17, verse 8, you see, wow, there's a sleeping beast in that abyss who is being healed, he's being revived and being made ready to ascend out of that abyss for one last final time. And he becomes the 7th of those 7 kings of Revelation 17:10, referred to in verse 10 as the other is not yet come. There are 7 kings, 5 are fallen. The one is was only present tense between 1935 and 1945 with Mussolini. And on April 28, 1945, when he was shot in the belly, along with his mistress and his comrades, hung upside down from the canopy of an Esso gasoline station, that ended the sixth kingship, or sixth dynasty, however you want to say it. Revelation 17 verse 10 refers to it as there being 7 kings. Mussolini was the 6th king. The one is, but he was only is, during some of the early days of God's end-time apostle Herbert Armstrong, again, between 1935 and 1945. Then the beast went back into the abyss that German Chancellor Angela Merkel was talking about last year, January last year. Went back into the abyss, but not killed. Oh, yeah, Mussolini was killed, but he was only the 6th of 7 kings. So there's one more to go, and the last part of verse 10 of Revelation 17 says, the other of those 7 kings, referring to the 7th king, is not yet come. And that's what we are actively watching for, brethren, and you should be watching for. Did I reference that today is the 10th? No, it's the 11th day of the 10th month on God's holy sacred calendar. I mean to usually do that. It's the opening. And on the pagan Roman calendar, it's now the 26th day of December, 2020. When we did the Bible study last night, it was just like it is this morning. It was the 11th day of the 10th month, because God begins the days at sunset, not the way man has changed time through the Roman Catholic Church and the Roman Empire. You know, the first Roman calendar was called the Julian calendar, after Caesar, after the Roman emperor. But after 1,000 years went by and that calendar got wacko, you know, it's a solar calendar. It doesn't take into consideration the lunar cycle, as God's calendar does both lunar and solar. You know, God's got it balanced, but man tries to create a new calendar, the Roman calendar, and after 1,000 years it got 10 days out of whack with even what it's supposed to be following, the solar cycling. And so Pope Gregory, not an emperor, but a pope of the Roman Catholic Church, made a correction and lopped out 10 days. Now, he didn't change any of the days of the week. They just lopped out 10 days on that Roman calendar. And so when you cross the line between the old Julian original Roman calendar, the Julian calendar, and the now Gregorian calendar, you got to be aware of that transition at a certain date when 10 days got lopped out of the calendar system. So did they make a perfect calendar? No way. You know, God's got it, the calendar that we're going to be using in the future. After Jesus Christ returns, those of you that poo-poo God's sacred calendar, the Hebrew calendar, well, you're going to have to, if you want to be around, you're going to have to straighten up your act, because this calendar you poo-poo is going to be the calendar of eternity, of the future. When Jesus Christ returns, that Roman calendar, when this statue above my head that represents the governments of all the governments of this world, all the way back to King Nebuchadnezzar, and down through the feet made of iron and clay, representing a future conglomeration of 10 kings who don't exist yet, which should be an interesting point to all of us. These 10 toes up here, I'm going to come back with you, know that's up there. We'll keep the feet in the picture. Those 10 toes that represent the modern day era of the Roman Empire, yet to be revived. When it's revived, it'll be revived by what these 10 toes represent. 10 concurrent, not consecutive, one after another, like the beast from the sea pictures those horns on that beast from the sea represent consecutive governments, one after another, not existing at the same time, but one after another. Maybe some overlap in some cases, but consecutive, not concurrent governments. This beast from the land, its horns represent 10 concurrent kings. They all come into existence and power at the same time, and at that time they give their power, the dominion that they are given over the rebounded areas of the earth, reboundaried areas of the earth. They give their power over all those areas of the earth to the seventh head, which they'll appoint, and the woman riding that head will place the crown on the head of that seventh beast in a coronation ceremony that, if tradition holds true, or holds as it has been done in the past, that coronation ceremony will be conducted on the second floor of the Romer building in Frankfurt, Germany, inside the Kaisersaal, which is the German word for Emperor's Hall. And we will then see this thing in the abyss that German Chancellor Angela Merkel was warning everybody to keep your eye on it. You better look into the abyss, she said. And she gave a good warning, because ascending out of that abyss, as Revelation 17 verse 8 says to us, God says through the Apostle Paul's writing in verse 8 of Revelation 17, the seventh, the other that's not yet come, is coming. Duality in prophecy, it came once, it ascended from being wounded in that abyss in the form of Mussolini, and there are some ancestors of former emperors we're watching, but we don't know who yet. We all have to watch. And then suddenly, as if a thief comes in the night, as if you got caught in a trap, like a mouse trap catching a little mouse, or in the woods a big trap catching a bear. Boom! Had the animal known that trap was there, it would have avoided it. And that's why God tells us, watch, because you're gonna stumble into that trap unexpectedly. It's gonna spring on you. It's only kind of a sideline example that Mr. Armstrong gave about the mousetrap catching the little mouse. It's just going to spring on everybody like a thief coming in the night when you least expect it, unless you're watching. And then you'll have a good idea that if you're watching world news every day that relates to the first 4 active seals of the 7, only 4 of the 7 seals are active. And between the 4th seal and the 5th seal being the next major event in prophecy, the opening of the Great Tribulation, Christ said, watch these 4 that are active so that you'll have a good idea when this 5th seal is about to spring open on you. So you'll more or less be ready. But more than that, in Luke 21, verse 36, Christ held out, and I think we've got that on the screen now. We do, yeah, I can even punch that up so you can see it full screen here. Let's bring it out. Watch. Watch what? Watch, he's just been explaining the seals from Revelation, and as I mentioned, only the first 4 are presently active, and at this point in time, they were active back to the time of Christ. They've grown progressively more frequent, more intense, and Christ in another place tells us when they become full bloom, know that the kingdom of God is near. Know that the 5th seal is about to open. That starts a 3.5-year countdown clock toward the kingdom of God. But he holds out a promise saying that if you will watch, and the therefore is there because the previous verse, as I was just saying to you, says that great tribulation that he was just explaining in plain language in the previous verses. Christ here in verse 35 says, it comes as a snare upon all them that dwell on the face of the whole earth. Or as I've said before, as our French brothers would say, on tout le monde, everybody in the world. It comes like a snare, and it catch you off guard unless you're ready for it. And so God says, watch, therefore, because it's coming like a snare. And he says, if you do that watching, and if you pray always, pray without ceasing, so that what? You can get these two promises. In time order, be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass with the opening of the fifth seal, Great Tribulation, through the sixth seal, heavenly astro signs and the sun, the moon, the stars, and then the year-long seventh seal, Day of the Lord. You can be accounted worthy to escape all of that wrath of man, Satan, and God pouring out his wrath during the last year of those 3.5 years of Great Tribulation in the form of the Day of the Lord, the seventh seal, and its 7 trumpets. And the seventh trumpet, including after Christ returns, the third woe, the 7 last vials of plagues being poured out. And then the second promise that God offers to account you worthy of is to be able to stand before the Son of Man in the first resurrection. All right, some of you get that. I've preached that here often, and I'm opening up with it sermonette style. Hey, we ought to get into the hymns so you can really be awake with me and a part of the service. All right, but hopefully that helped warm us up to what we're going to hear after we sing some hymns. We're going to go to Mr. Armstrong's telecast related to Revelation and this coming Great Tribulation and the beast symbols. He's really going to be talking about the beast symbols. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. I meant to open up full wide here on this screen. These beast symbols on both sides of our wall, screen 1 over here and screen 4 over here. The beast from the ocean, the beast from the land, to show us what's about to happen. And Mr. Armstrong is going to explain these symbols himself in the telecast we'll play from 1982 after we sing some hymns. Let's go ahead and let me come back here with you, and we'll punch up one of the hymns. We'll stop after a couple and hear Dan Listen tell you what his needs in prayer are. I'll remind you of what Dane Host and his son Jacob Host in Susanville, California, need in the way of prayers for which they've been anointed. I'll tell you what I believe she still needs it. Yeah, what Jeannie Gladden and her mother, Mrs. Hush, in Virginia need in the way of prayers for which they've been anointed. And so we can pray for one another. But let's start out today getting you involved here with a hymn or two. And Dale, if you and Patrick in New York are with us live, I'm going to ask you again to practice your song leading. You guys get down here, and I got a message from Dan we'll play after a couple of hymns where Dan's going to give you some suggestions about how to get down here. So I'll play that for you in a moment. But if you guys will practice your hymn leading, I'll just very quickly remind you that both of these hymns we're going to do next are 4/4 timing. And for 4/4 timing, your 1, 2, 3, 4 is down, inside, outside, up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Any of the rest of you, ladies too, you're going to be leading the hymns after Christ returns, after you're transformed from this flesh into spirit, and we're no longer male and female at that transformation. You'll be kings, priests, you'll be mayors, governors, according to your works, over a number of 1, 5, or 10 cities, and you'll be leading the songs for your people on the Sabbath, or you'll be teaching those who of the human sphere that you might have, do that for you, that you delegate that to. You'll need to teach them. So if you want to practice while we're doing this, be my guest, especially if you're home and just a few of you there, home alone, or a few of you. Go ahead, wave your hands, learn how to do this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you might need to tap out on a table, listen to some hymns, and start tapping out every time you hear the downbeat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and get it so you know when to 1, hit the down. 2, 3, 4, 1. Now I have to work at it, and I'm doing it live with you, but I think I've kind of got it down on these few songs we're doing. We're going to have more hymns, different hymns we'll be doing in the future, but we're going to start with one that's been kind of almost like our theme song for the hymns, put right in first position for a good reason, something we should always have on our mind, especially as and when we are tempted, and we will be. That devil is still on the throne of the earth, to resist temptation and sin, because this, as this hymn reminds us, our blessings come with obedience, and happiness comes with those blessings, and blessed and happy is the man who never walks astray, as this hymn goes. Let's all sing it together here this morning. Beginning with verse 1, everybody on the downbeat. Blessed and happy is the man who doth never walk astray, nor with the ungodly men's stands in sin. His way, 2, 3, 4, chorus. All he does prospers well, but the wicked are not so. They are chaff before the wind, driven to and fro. Great, everybody. Verse 2 now. Ne'er in scorner's chair he sits, for he places his delight in God's law, and meditates on it day and night. 2, 3, 4, all he does prospers well, but the wicked are not so. They are chaff before the wind, driven to and fro. Everybody, let's finish it on verse 3. Heartily, he shall be a tree that grows, planted by the riverside, which in season yields its fruit, green its leaves abide. Everybody on the chorus now, final chorus. All he does prospers well, but the wicked are not so. They are chaff before the wind, boom, 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 driven to and fro, boom, 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 boom. All right, brethren, those of you who know Cat Williams and know the story of Cat Williams, you know that when I used to go see her in the nursing home, the convalescent home, she would, we had no music, and I couldn't bring any of that in. We had to sing a cappella, and so as Cat would, in between Cat singing, she would become the musical instruments. She, she's related to the Temptations, the old rock and roll Temptations group, and she got rhythm and what have you. And Cat would add in between. She'd add, as if it were musical instruments, she'd add these boom, boom, booms, and I kind of got into a habit of doing that with her, and it added nicely to our singing there. People would gather around, they'd join in with us singing Sabbath hymns. I think the staff, some of the staff didn't like that, because, people, by the broadcast of the devil, they hate the Sabbath. Those in authority do, a lot of times, and so they didn't welcome or respect. They gave way, but some of them didn't respect what we were doing. They would interrupt it sometimes. But Cat would really add nicely, the boom, boom, boom. So I'm in an old habit of doing that. I hope I don't ruin it for you here. Let's go to the next hymn and sing. I have two versions of that up here. I sing from Psalm 9, Declare His Works to All Nations. Everybody together on verse 1. I will sing, Most High, praises to thy name with thy whole heart, and proclaim thy wonders. I will rejoice and exalt in thee. My foes fall at thy sight, for thou hast maintained my cause and my cry. God will judge from his throne, he shall remain forevermore. Verse verse 2, everybody. God will rule uprightly, judge the world with righteousness. The oppressed who seek him, he will to them a refuge be. For the Lord will not forget those who put their trust and confidence in him. To the Lord sing praises, declare his works to all nations. Verse 3, everybody again. He will not forget his people. They declare his great works, and he will not forget their cry. Rise, O Lord, put them all in fear, all the nations that forget that thou art God. Judge them, Lord, before thee. Let the nations know they are but men. All right, thank you to all of you who sang along with us there on these first couple of hymns. We'll do another one in just a moment, but I want to go to a recording I have of from Dan Listen. Yeah, there's Dan when we were in Florida together in Pensacola on the last great day. This is a picture from the last great day where Dan was reading either the Bible scriptures as I read the questions from the correspondence course, the Ambassador College Bible correspondence course, on that day's holy day, subject of the last great day. And we did 2 services, morning, afternoon, popped over to the Golden Corral in between that, and Dan did an extremely good job reading the scriptures that answered the questions from the Bible correspondence course on the last great day. We did that in 2011. We did that in 2012. Some of you may have seen that. And Dan has been a couple of times in the hospital, and I have a telephone conversation with Dan that is on. I had that picture with a telephone conversation where Dan is telling what he needs in prayer. And brother, I hope you'll listen up, maybe make a note, and be praying for Dan. He's got a condition that affects. I'm going to let Dan tell you himself. Here's Dan Listen telling a summary of what he would appreciate, brethren, that you can give him in prayer. He's been anointed by one of the local area ministers in Tuscaloosa, and here's what he would appreciate you asking God to help heal up for him.
My heart gets stronger, and it seems like it gradually is. And meds, I'd like to not have any more pain in other parts of my body, like the leg and all that. But those are smaller things compared to just the heart getting stronger. Well, the meds are part of that. They're trying to control everything with the meds instead of doing another operations from the other groin.
Dan, with what I understand from what you said, I'll shoot some prayers up for you and ask others to.
Yeah, the main thing is for the heart, just to keep, help it keep getting stronger.
Okay, all right, brethren, so you heard it from Dan Listen himself. His last name, Listen, is pronounced like listening, but is spelled Lisson. Lisson. Listen. And Dan will appreciate prayers for that his heart will get stronger and that they can get him off those meds. He doesn't like those meds. I don't blame you, Dan. And that the condition they were trying to correct with the meds, that God will just intervene and heal and let the doctors see, hey, you are healing up nicely. You don't need all this junk. Okay, junk meds. All right. And so, all right, we had a picture of Dan up there, and here's a picture, another picture of Dan in a restaurant during the Feast of Tabernacles 2020 when before we went to Pensacola, we were in Panama City, and this was a picture from a restaurant in Panama City in 2012, and we used the picture. We asked the waitress that Dan is pictured next to, because the following day we were going to Pensacola, and we were giving out clues each day. We'd travel to a different city during the feast and do our live streaming related to the feast from a different city between Alabama and Florida, ultimately getting down to Pensacola. So that day, before we went to Pensacola, we gave this clue. I don't know if you can see that clearly, but the big barrel of cola there next to the waitress Dan is standing next to. Let me see if I can find the button where I can bring that out full shot to you. I think I can bring it out here. Is a Pepsi Cola barrel. And so we said that the city we're going to tomorrow relates to Pepsi Cola. And I gave it away. Some people guessed it. You're going to Pensacola. And that's where we wound up for the last great day in 2012. All right, now I mentioned to you guys in New York that Dan had a suggestion or tip for you as to how you could accomplish the travel you need to travel to get down here, whether you fly or take a train. Now, listen, this is going to be some strong man-to-man advice, guys. And so, sit down, be ready for this. Here's what Dan suggests that you guys do. Let me cue that up. Here's what Dan is saying for Dale and Patrick for being able to get here to Alabama.
Man up and just do it. Want to fly, and they're so afraid of that, then go ahead and take a train. But they don't need somebody to ride with them. I mean, come on. They're of age that they can do something like that under. Besides, they'll be traveling together, right? So, yeah, they don't need anybody else to travel with them.
Hey, Dan, I'll tell them what you said.
Yeah, tell them what I said.
That's it, guys. Here is the bottom line from Dan the man. Listen. So listen up, guys.
Dan says, yeah.
All right. You looked out, and my phone ran out at the end of that conversation. That's what the beeping was for, saying put the phone in the battery charger. All right, guys, there's some tough man-to-man talk. As Dan said at the opening, he said, how do you say that? Well, let's see.
Man up and just do it.
All right, he said, guys, man up, just do it. So, face your fear. And he says, you don't need anybody traveling it alone. But your first time, well, all right, Dan, you may be being a little bit tough on the guys, but if somebody from the New York area, if you're able and would like to travel down with the guys, they want to take a train, I've encouraged them because the prices are so inexpensive. Go ahead and face your fear of flying, because as I mentioned to the guys, this is not something behind their back. I mentioned to them direct the other day. Look, Revelation 12:14 talks about our flight, and Christ preceding that in Matthew 24, verse 20, told us something that we should be actually remembering even right now. I've got a scripture on the screen for that too. To be praying that our flight be not in the winter, nor on the Sabbath day, as he said in verse 20 of 24, I think it is. Let me get that full screen for us so we can all see it. Yeah, verse 20 of Matthew 24, Christ said, pray that your flight, now he's referring to the flight that's called an escape in Luke 24, verse 36, that you can be accounted worthy to escape. Well, how are you going to escape? Well, Revelation 12:14 tells us it is via two wings of a great eagle, symbolic perhaps of modern jet aircraft. If God were to choose to do that literal, like he did a great fish for Jonah, he's got great eagle prepared for us. If he were to do it literally, instead of that being the symbol of modern day aircraft, and you do see eagles picking up animals and even small humans with their claws and flying off with them. And a great eagle that God prepares specially, like he prepared the great fish for Jonah, could easily be carting some of us over to the Middle East. And so he said, pray, and because we're going to be outdoors once we get there, whether we go on nice modern aircraft all heated up and pressurized and all that, once we get there, we're going to be outdoors in a situation where we're going to have to run from an army, as verses 15 and 16 of Revelation 12 tell us. So after verse 14, we get flown there. You know, we may be overnight. If it's winter, I was going to say that ain't cool, and it's not. It's cold in the winter. People can die out in that cold overnight. So Christ tells us, be wise. Brethren, we should be doing this right now. We should definitely be praying that our flight be not in the winter, nor on the Sabbath day. Now, when Christ repeats, what Christ said is repeated by Mark in, well, we're dropping off at verse 8, that reminds us that unless Christ intervenes, well, he's reminding us of what's beginning of sorrows, the four seals coming. Let's pop up to verse 18, where Christ is recorded again about saying, pray that your flight be not in the winter. Mark doesn't mention the Sabbath. Matthew tells us we should also pray that our flight be not on the Sabbath. But to underscore the importance of not flying in the cold winter, Mark only records, pray that your flight be not in the winter. And especially now during this winter, when those four seals, they are ripe, brethren. They are bloomed full. How much more God may want them to bloom? You know, hard to say, because they're full bloom now. The fifth seal could open any moment, and if God the Father were to turn to Christ and say, hey, enough, let's wrap it, let's go, let's open up the fifth seal. Well, we want some prayers in there where Christ can respond, well, hey, look, Stephen down there, and Nancy over here, and Greg over there, and Bob and Julie over yonder, and whoever and who all, you know, are on their knees before us, in my name. They've been asking you, Father, don't you remember that their flight be not in the winter? And Father say, okay, I really want to wrap it up, but let's honor their prayer. Well, yeah, that's wise. I'm glad you told them that. You know, we shouldn't get them out there in the cold of winter, and we have to change all the weather for them and all that. You know, okay, we'll hold it off till spring. Well, brother, that holding off to spring might not happen unless enough of us are following this instruction of Christ to pray that our flight be not in winter. We ought to be praying that every day between now and the time and next spring. I was going to say between now and the time when this flight occurs, and especially till the spring. Now, the spring comes, well, we don't have to pray so hard then that our flight be not in the winter. Winter for the past season is over, unless you want to pray ahead in advance for next winter, which God may take it like this. Okay, you don't want it in the winter, I want to wrap this up. We're not going to wait till winter. I'm going to wrap it up now. Which, oh God, let's do it. Let's wrap it up. Thy kingdom come. But don't start the clock, the 3.5-year clock now. Wait till spring. Because Christ instructed us that your flight be not in the winter. You know, God gives wisdom to the wise. The wise, understanding. He gives understanding to the wise. The wise, as Daniel said, will understand. So we have understanding about how we should pray. It's now winter. We should definitely, brethren, be praying that our flight be not in the winter. Gulp, you know. Duh. Let's do it. Please join me in doing that. It was 21 degrees last night here. Now, it's only going to be 31 tonight. That's still a degree below freezing. John Byron, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I cranked my water faucet open, and not full blast, but, you know, I let it drip enough that water flow would help keep the pipes from freezing and bursting my valves, as happened to me one year. You probably remember, and I appreciate you reminding me. Hey, cold weather, Stephen, get your faucets open. Yeah, and John, I appreciate that very much. I did, and for the rest of you, take John's advice. Get those, let a faucet somewhere drip during these cold weather so that there's flow, the water's flowing and not sitting there just freezing up inside your pipes. Okay, but what else do we have up there? I think the next scripture... Oh, yeah, we're ready. We're ready for what Mr. Armstrong is going to talk about, but we're going to sing one more hymn first. So let me switch our screens around. How do I do this? Let's see. First of all, we'll come out here, and then I'm going to switch this so we can get this screen back over here where I can put up Mr. Armstrong. But let's see. I think we're going to sing one. We're going to put up the next hymn we're going to sing. Oh, and I want to tell you, I do have an email out to a reporter in Israel who has offered to provide reporting for my World Watch program from the Middle East, and more particularly from Israel, where she is located and stationed, reporting for TV channel I-24 over there, Israel 24. This is Emily Rose, and Emily, oops, I'm sorry, Emily, I was going to bring you a little bit closer here. Emily has offered to, she's the one who's offered to do our reports from Israel. And Emily, I hope to hear from you this morning. I've got, let's see, how can I check my email? I'll take this off the screen. All right, at some point before we play Mr. Armstrong, I'm going to just quickly check my email. I have an email out to Emily this morning. Emily, I hope you get it in time. Asking her if she, we hadn't figured out how we're going to connect for the reports. Whether I'll use WhatsApp or some method of connecting. But I asked her if she would respond to why Israel attacked Syria, what she may know about that, and I asked her also how she's doing over there. And Emily, we hope you and your family and all your friends are okay and safe from those missile attacks being lobed into Israel from Gaza, from the Palestinians in Gaza, with the Hezbollah. And then I hope the situation, I hope it's safe for you guys, okay? And I was asking her if she knows why exactly Israel attacked Syria. It may be because of some reports about the Syrians putting up flags right on the border at Israel, but there may be more to it. If you know more on that, Emily, we will definitely appreciate hearing from you directly from Israel, from the Middle East. All right, but that's something that's we've got in the works and that Emily has offered to do for us. Let's sing this last hymn, also from Psalm 9, before we go to Mr. Armstrong. I will praise thee, O Eternal. Everybody, let's sing together on verse 1. Sing praise to thy name, but my foes shall turn and stumble. At thy presence they shall fall. The eternal judges rightly, and forever he will rule. Everybody, verse 2. But he judges all with fairness. He will rule with equity. All who know his name shall trust him. He will not forsake his own. Everybody, verse 3. Sing to him and praise his name. Tell his deeds among the nations. Tell of all his glorious works. He He avenges all his people. He will not forget their cry. To the Lord who dwells in Zion, sing to him and praise his name. All right, brethren, thank you again for those of you who sang along with us on that one. And we are going to go now to God's end-time apostle, Herbert W. Armstrong, with that telecast where he's speaking in January 1982. I'm going to go ahead and put his lower third up here for this. He's speaking January 1932. I'm sorry, January 5, 1982, on the subject of Revelation and the symbols of Revelation. God's end-time apostle, Herbert W. Armstrong.
And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the names of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and the feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. Now, what did that beast mean? It's only a symbol, but it means something that is very vital to you and me on the earth today. What is going to be the outcome of this tense situation now in the Middle East? You can be sure that all of the world troubles from now on are going to center more or less in the Middle East. And the grand smash climax of the present world crisis that we're really getting into already is going to end up in the Middle East, in and near Jerusalem and north of Jerusalem. There is only one way to know what is going to happen in the future. You know, astrology can't tell you. Many people are using astrology. It isn't going to tell you what is going to happen, what is best to do today or tomorrow or on any certain day. Fortune tellers can't tell you. There is only one source that can tell you unerringly what is going to happen in the future, and that is the Bible, the prophecies of the Bible. Now, about 1/3 of all of the Bible is devoted to prophecy, but almost nobody understands it. And 90% of those prophecies are devoted to events that are to happen in this generation and have not yet happened. We're just beginning to emerge into it right now. We're already in a situation of extreme world trouble, and it's worldwide. In the United States, we've been now coming into a time of deeper and deeper depression, and it may get worse. But there is depression all over the world, and there is trouble all over the world. In the prophecies of the Bible, the biggest book of prophecy in the New Testament is the book of Revelation, and I've been speaking quite a little about the book of Revelation in recent programs. Now, the book of Revelation has as its keynote what is called the Day of the Lord. We have been for 6,000 years in the day we might call the Day of Man, or we might better call it the Day of Satan, because he has been influencing humanity and all humanity for 6,000 years in a way that human beings simply do not realize. In this world, for 6,000 years, we have finally come in this 20th century to a place in the United States and in Western Europe and Japan of awesome progress. We've sent men to the moon and back. We've landed spacecraft on the surface of Mars to send back close-up photographs of the very surface of Mars and fairly close photographs of Jupiter and Saturn. that astronomers say are mind-boggling. We've made awesome progress in many directions, but did you ever notice it's all in materialism? But we're living in a time of appalling evils, and all of the evils are a matter of humans dealing with humans. We don't know how to get along with one another. Husband and wife can't get along together. Parents and children can't get along together. Any police chief will tell you that there are more murders in the home today than any other place. And many of them are husband killing wife, wife killing husband, parents killing children, children killing parents. Family can't get along with next door neighbor. Capital can't get along with labor. Black can't get along with white. Different races have contentions. And all we have is appalling troubles because we don't know how to live together. Well, those are spiritual problems. I've gone into a lot about that, and there's a reason for it. There's a cause for every effect. But we've come to this time near the end of what is known as the day of man, or you could call it the day of Satan. The day of the Lord is the time when the very Creator, God Almighty, is going to intervene in world affairs supernaturally, is going to once again send Jesus Christ back to this earth in the power and the glory of the eternal Creator God, and is going to bring this world to its senses and is going to bring us at last world peace. And I proclaim that world peace to the heads of nations all over this world, as well as to you who are listening and viewing on television. Now, the book of Revelation reveals what is going to happen in this day of the Lord, and we're almost at the very beginning of it right now. The book of Revelation speaks in symbols. It is the revelation of Jesus Christ. He is the revealer. No wonder people can't understand it. It has been closed and sealed until the time of the end. That's explained by Daniel. I'll read that to you in just a moment. But it all began in the time of Jesus Christ by false apostles preaching wrong things and counterfeiting the very gospel of Jesus Christ. And that has been done, and the whole world has been deceived, and the world doesn't realize it. You know, as I've said time and time again, when one is deceived, he doesn't know he's deceived. And again, what you don't know that you don't know it. It's just that simple. But we're very near to that time of the day of the Lord. But in the book of Revelation, I've come to the time in that book of the beginning of the day of the Lord. There is a story flow in the book of Revelation, but also there are inset chapters. Now, chapters 13, chapter 12, chapter 13, and chapter 17 are all inset chapters, as I call them. That is, they are inset into the story flow. They go back some time in history and bring you up to date. And so I would like to begin a little bit with Revelation 13 and verse 1. And I stood upon the sand of the sea. Here, the Apostle John is revealing what he saw in a vision. He was in a vision in the Isle of Patmos in the Mediterranean Sea. In a vision, he was caught up to heaven where he saw many things that were going to happen on the earth. He also saw some things on the earth. And here he says that in this vision, he stood upon the sand of the sea, and he saw a beast rising up out of the sea. That is, a wild animal, a beast. And he's speaking of wild animals, and incidentally, they are symbolic. The book of Revelation speaks in symbols all the way through, but it explains its symbols. And it is the revelation of Jesus Christ, and you have to look to the words of Jesus Christ to explain these symbols even. So he stood upon the seashore, and I saw a beast, or a wild animal, rising out of the sea, having 7 heads. That's a strange kind of an animal, having 7 heads, and 10 horns. not a single horn or two horns, but 10 horns. And upon his horns 10 crowns. Now, a crown symbolizes a ruler and authority and political rule. 10 crowns on these 10 horns, and upon his heads the names of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. Now, it was not a leopard, it was just like a leopard. And the feet were as the feet of a bear. Now, that would be a funny kind of a leopard, having feet like a bear, but the main body like a leopard. A leopard is cat-like and very, very quick, but it having ponderous feet like a big bear. And his mouth as the mouth of a lion, especially of a male lion. That is the strongest part of a lion. So he had the strongest part of a lion, the strongest part of a bear, and the most effective part, the cat-like part of a leopard. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. Now in Revelation 12 and verse 7 or verse 9, you will find that the dragon is Satan the devil. Also, it's in the 20th chapter of Revelation. The Bible shows that in other places, that dragon is merely a symbol meaning Satan the devil. It isn't fashionable to believe in a devil today, I know, but there is a devil. He is invisible, and people can't see the devil. The Bible speaks a great deal about a devil, and you can't account for many of the things that have been happening in this world except through a devil. Now, here was a strange animal, and to understand about that wild animal, you have to go back to the book of Daniel, where you begin to find it explained. And you do find it explained in the 7th chapter of the book of Daniel. First, however, I would like to turn to the 12th chapter of the book of Daniel, and I want to show you something that is said there. Daniel, near the very end of his whole book, is writing this: I heard, but I understood not. Now, an angel had come to the prophet Daniel and told him things. He heard what was said. He recorded it in writing. He wrote it down, but he did not understand. Then said I, O my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? In other words, what's going to come out of all that you've given me and all that you've shown me? And he said, Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed and sealed up until the end. We now, my friends, are at the time of the end. They were closed and sealed until now, and that also is true of the book of Revelation. No wonder it's been a mystery and people have never understood it. Now, at the time of the end, he says, Many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. And at the time of the end, he said, many will be running to and fro, and knowledge will be increased. Well, people are certainly going to and fro, not only in automobiles and on foot, but in airplanes and every possible way that you can think of in transportation today. And knowledge has certainly increased, especially in this 20th century. The world's fund of knowledge doubled in the one decade of the 1960s. The world's fund of knowledge doubled, but our troubles doubled also in that same decade. Why? The increased knowledge didn't cause it, but it certainly didn't eradicate the evils. It simply did not. Well, now I'd like to turn to the 7th chapter of Daniel, where Daniel, in a dream, saw the very same thing that explains that beast that John saw in Revelation. Now, what did that beast mean? It's only a symbol, but it means something that is very vital to you and me on the earth today. So in Daniel, the 7th chapter, let's begin with verse 1. In the first year of Belshazzar, the king of Babylon, almost 600 years before Christ at this time, he says, I, Daniel, had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed, and then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my night visions by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven over the great sea. And four great beasts, not one, but four great beasts, came up from the sea, diverse one from the other. The first was like a lion. Now he saw a beast that was like a lion. Then he beheld a second beast that was like a bear with his ponderous feet. And then he saw a third like a leopard. Now here we see the same thing we saw one beast in Revelation. It was like a leopard, but it had the feet of a bear and the mouth of a lion. And here we find the first beast that Daniel saw was like a lion. The second was like a bear, not a bear, but was like a bear. The third was like a leopard. And that beast had also 4 heads. Not 7 heads, but 4 heads, this leopard did. And dominion was given unto him. Dominion means power, political rule, as we're going to see. And now verse 7. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly. And it had great iron teeth. Notice the iron in this beast. It devoured, and it brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all of the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Now here are the 10 horns, and here are really 7 heads, because the first beast had a head, the second beast had a head, the third beast like a leopard had 4 heads, and that makes 6 heads altogether. And the fourth beast, of course, had a head. Now that is the 7 heads, but on the fourth beast, which came later, were the 10 horns. Now we have the beasts, and you see what John saw in the book of Revelation was a composite of these. It had the cat-like quickness of a leopard, it had ponderous feet of a bear, and it had the strength of a mouth of a lion. And it's like this fourth beast, and it involved all 4 of these beasts. In other words, what John saw really was this fourth beast, which had all of the power of those before it. Now, what does it mean? Why is he talking about wild animals here? What has that got to do? You know, I used to say when I was a boy, 11 years old, I used to say about something, if I thought it wasn't important, I said, well, what has that got to do with the price of putty? And you might ask, what has this got to do with the price of putty? All about these wild animals. Well, it's very, very important to you and me, because they represent things that happen in our time in the world now. Now let's get to verse 17. These great beasts, or wild animals, which are 4 kings which shall arise out of the earth. Now we drop down to verse 23. Thus he said, this angel speaking to Daniel, said to him, the fourth beast shall be the 4th kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and it shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down, and break it in pieces. This 4th wild animal then, which did have all of the quickness, the speed, and everything of a leopard, the ponderous feet of a bear, the strength of the mouth of a lion, it was stronger than any, and strong like iron. And you see what John saw really was this 4th beast, which had all of the power of those before it. Now dropping down to verse 27. And the kingdom, and the dominion, and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven. So it is on earth, and it's a kingdom, it's a nation, it's a people with a government over them, shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominion shall serve and obey him. Now the him there is referring to the one that will be the ruler in that kingdom. And incidentally, I think right in there I'm going to turn to something that I hadn't expected to turn to in the 3rd chapter of the book of Revelation, in a message to the 7 churches, the churches of the time since Christ. Here is the message. To him, this is the very words of Jesus Christ, to him that overcometh, that is a saint, a Christian, or as we call them, saints. You know, the Catholic Church have named many cities and towns and places after certain saints. So we have Saint this and Saint that. We have St. Louis in the United States, and we have St. Petersburg. We have San Luis Obispo. We have San Diego, which means saint, and so on. Now to him that overcometh will I grant to sit with me in my throne. Jesus Christ, as I have said time and again, was born to be a king. He gave the parable of a rich young ruler going to a far country when he went to heaven as he ascended after his resurrection to get for himself a kingdom and then to return. He had to have that kingdom given to him by God the Father at the throne of the whole universe to come down and rule over all of the nations of this earth. Now we're speaking about 4 governments on this earth. And finally, the saints are going to take it. But here, Christ is the King of Kings that is coming to rule the earth, and the saints will rule under him. Now he says, to him that overcometh will I grant to sit with me in my throne when he comes to rule over the whole earth, even as I also overcame and am set down. Now he's in heaven on his Father's throne, on my Father's throne. And so I wanted you to see that. Now then, if we're going to understand this, you have to go further back into some of the prophecies of Daniel. In the 2nd chapter of Daniel, and I've gone through that in previous programs. I won't have time to go clear through it this time, but just a little of it. In the 2nd chapter of Daniel, it was in the days of King Nebuchadnezzar, some 600 years before Christ. King Nebuchadnezzar had organized the first great world empire. It was the very first world empire. And he had a strange dream. It was an astonishing dream. But he wanted to know what it was, and he wanted to know what it meant. He thought it had meaning. So he called his fortune tellers, his astrologers, his Chaldeans, and so on. But he said, tell us the dream. They couldn't tell him. He demanded that they tell the dream or he was going to put them to death. Well, they said, nobody can tell you the dream. Then they found that Daniel was a prophet, a young Jewish lad that was there, had been in the captivity when the Jews had been taken captive at that time, and that somehow God was with him. And Daniel prayed, and God revealed to him what the dream was and what it meant. So he came before the king, and he said, the God of heaven has revealed this. He said, I could not do it. No man can do it, but God did reveal it to me. And he tells the king what is going to happen in the latter days. Now he saw a great image. Its head was of gold. Its breast and arms were of silver. Its belly of brass or bronze. And its, the legs were of iron, and the feet part of iron and part of clay. And the head was Nebuchadnezzar. The arms and the breast were another kingdom to follow him, which was the Persian kingdom, the kingdom of Persia. And another would follow, which was Greece. And after that would come another, the 4th kingdom, strong as iron, represented by the legs, the Roman Empire. And it would carry on clear down to our time. Now the Roman Empire is yet to be revived, and that will happen very soon in Europe. And apparently part of it in Eastern Europe and part in Western Europe, where the old ancient Roman Empire was, by 10 nations, which are the 10 toes. They're going together, and they are going to fight Christ that is coming. Now this shows Gentile world-ruling governments that have been ruling the world politically and representing all of the world-ruling governments from 600 years before Christ down to our time today. And we're coming into that very time. Now, other things are revealed in these prophecies that are immediately to happen, but it does get down to our time today. And it's very important that we understand these things, or you don't know what is going to happen. And not only that, the Bible reveals so much more than that. It reveals the cause of all of today's troubles. It reveals the purpose being worked out here below, and I've mentioned how Prime Minister Churchill mentioned that before the American Congress in World War II, that there is a purpose being worked out here below, and people don't realize that God Almighty is working out a purpose through humanity. And Jesus Christ is coming to save us from all the world troubles that we're having today and bring us world peace. It is coming, and it's coming in our time. Now continue to listen to these programs. You won't hear these truths on any other program, I assure you. I'm sorry, I wish you did. I really wish you did. But I would also like to send you some very, very important literature that will help reveal these things to you. Now, I have a booklet, Who is the Beast? Explaining who the beast is and what is coming in the book of Revelation and how that is to be revived very soon in the Middle East and in Europe. And you're going to see it. Also, the booklet that I've mentioned many times on this program, the book of Revelation, Unveiled at Last. It will open the book of Revelation to your understanding. Now, especially this book, Who is the Beast? That beast is coming, and we don't have any fanciful interpretation of that, but the real one. And Herbert W. Armstrong speaking. Goodbye, friends.
Okay, brethren, thank you, Mr. Armstrong, and thank you for those of you who are here and watching. And, all right, I called somebody back. I don't know who it was, and I was trying to see maybe that was somehow a call from our reporter in Israel. But so far, I'm not seeing anything unless she has sent me an email. So let me zoom out full screen here, and let me flip this over and take a see if I can get to it where I can take a quick look and see. I'll tell you what, let me do this. Let me put this scripture, this last scripture Mr. Armstrong used full screen, because I don't want anybody's private email popping up here. Okay, it looks like, let me refresh this and see if I've gotten, okay, well, I haven't gotten anything. I sure hope that our reporter Emily Rose in Israel is okay with all that bombing activity going on over there. All right, well, brethren, all right, and that's Emily. In case we hear from her, she's offered to do our reports for on World Watch TV, and I will appreciate your prayers, brethren, that God willing and the creek don't rise, we'll be able to get those reports back on the air, and with maybe some of our own reporters like Emily and others in other countries, and then that could even branch into a few other things too, which could be very good. Okay, but let's see what we've got next. I think we're just gonna sign it on off for today. I forgot to hit the record button. I'm gonna have to download it from either YouTube or Facebook to be able to put it in where we save it. Also, some people check it on Vimeo because they can't use either one of the other services. So I'll get that after we're off the air. So let me just thank those of you who joined us here live for being here with us, and those of you that will be watching later from the archive. Thank you for your being with us too at your different on-demand availability to watch it. So I'm going to encourage you, if you missed last night's Bible study, check the cogtv.org webpage and pull it up from the videos archive video. Till next time, brethren, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreath wishing you a happy rest of this Sabbath day. We'll see you Friday night Bible study next Sabbath here on cogtv.org, Sabbath.tv.